Hi, Lucy.
Um,
It's really lovely to be here with you. As I already just said before we started recording, I'm a little bit starstruck because your book is just incredible in what your work. And I really appreciate you and what you're doing in the world and your integrity and kindness and activism and all the things. Um, And I'm Naomi Whitehead, and I'm a solution focused practitioner and coach and trainer. I'm increasingly working in inclusive, intersectional leadership space ideas. So over to you, Lucy, if you wanted to say a bit about you, and then we could begin our conversation.
well, hi, thanks for having me. I am Lucy. I am a writer, campaigner, community organizer, author, many things, all based around disability and ableism and making the world a little bit better for disabled people.
So I thought, there's so many ways to begin, and anything you bring is valuable to certainly to me into this session. I guess this conversation. There's something that was when I was revisiting your book today was thinking about how would you feel about sharing a little bit about the social model of disability? Because I think some people that I might share some of this with might not know much about that. And maybe the social model of disability and maybe how you think that relates to the changes needed in leadership.
Definitely. I would say, if you could know one thing about disability, you should know about the social model. It's really key to understanding everything else I do. Um, the social model basically says that disability as a category is socially constructed. So the example I like to use is I'm a wheelchair. If I go out with my friends, I can't get into a pub because they don't have a ramp. I am disabled by the fact that there is no ramp because if they bought a ramp, I would be able to go to the pub, but I still wouldn't be able to walk. But it wouldn't matter that I couldn't walk in that scenario because there'd be a ramp. So it's the lack of access that disabled me, not my own body. And I think people understand that when it comes to a wheelchair and a ramp, but it's actually true of all sorts of issues with disability. It's true about hiring practices, it's true about care, it's true about discrimination and the problem in society, not disabled people. And that is really empowering because that means it can change. Like we have the power to do something about society. Um, so in leadership, I think it's really important for anyone running any sort of organization to understand that the problem is not a disabled person. The problem is that society is not built for and by.
And there you go, just speaking with such clarity, like you always do. You articulate the idea, so it's so clear. And, and in your book, you talk about, in disabilities, sort of you take it to the next level about disability socially constructed, which I fully agree with. Could you sort of add to what you're saying there with that sort of definition and understanding so that people can have a deeper awareness of how structural changes and that leaders can influence that will change yours and anybody else's experience of any kind of difference or any kind of ability requirement?
Yeah, there is no reason for a disabled person to have a worse quality of life than a non-disabled person. My inability to walk does not make my life worse. The way people treat me because of my inability to walk does. So when I say socially constructed, I'm not saying that my impairment is socially constructed. I very much have cerebral palsy. I'm saying that the negative consequences of that are socially constructed. And if you talk to almost any disabled person, they will say, I'm not bothered about what I can't do. I'm bothered about how people react to that.
Mm.
So as I said, that's the thing that we actually have the power to control. So if we're in leadership and we want to do something about that, the very first step is to educate yourself on disability. There's lots of activists and writers and speakers who can help you do that. And it's to really listen to the disabled people about what we need and what the actual problems are, rather than trying to fix the problem that you've decided is just.
That's wow, so important when you say that about ask, respond. Oh, there's so many things in my head that you're making me think about that I've read from your work and that you've invited me to think about and learn about. And so when you say, and you also said then about listening, so there's like three things in my head I'd love to invite you to comment on. So it's like, so the listening. Another podcast that you've done with a colleague, I think in Australia. It was a wonderful podcast. And you talked, and you also talk in your book about this listening thing. So, like when you, so you would be booking people in your roles at the BBC, for example, and you would contact someone and you would articulate, you know, the invitation for a speaker to come into the BBC. I'm not sure of the exact details of the role. And then when doing that, people might not take the time to pause for a moment to listen and understand. And then also added to that, you've talked about in general workplaces, you articulating the requirements and then that not being responded to. And I think this thing about listening and all of us slowing down and noticing we can listen, we can act. It does take time initially, but what it can enable is such an equitable, more enjoyable, thriving world. I mean, what would you like to say on that? I mean,
Yeah, a couple of things. People often ask me in the context of disability at work, especially what they can do. And I think we're so focused on finding out what a disabled person can't do. But I never be things that a disabled person can't do. That is okay. But the thing to focus on is how do we enable people. So one of the easiest questions you can ask someone is, what do you need? And that might be, oh, I need a bit of a longer lunch break, so I got time to take it and go to the loo with my yeah. Or it might be, can I start later in the day? Because it takes me a while to get up and out of bed and everything. Or it might be, I need a different chair at my desk. And these are really easy things we we can do, and it doesn't require you to have a encyclopedic knowledge of disability. It just requires you to ask the question and listen to the answer.
Mm. Yes, that's simple. Oh my goodness, so simple.
People think disability is really complicated, and the big secret is that it's really not.
No, no. No, and the solution focused approach that I work with, which isn't just about kind of focusing on solutions, I think we talked about it's more kind of nuanced, it's more of a philosophy, and that is all about being curious about every human being's unique expertise, acknowledging that most people have the strengths, resources, skills required for change with, I would add, like accessibility, include, enabling that. And that, like you said, if you simply are curious, like, this is what you'd like, this is how we can progress towards it, we can provide that, like you said, and it's an analysis of something. So you talk about in your book as well about the absolute glorious joyfulness of being you in multiple different facets. And I mean, if your wit and your ability to engage is anything to go, like, I can see that, you've ignited something in me that, yeah, it just feels really alive. And I think you, so yeah, so focusing, so it's just the whole world should just be curious about what enables more joy, more accessibility, more participation, more of your activism. How can we make it fluid? And things like the stories, about the nightclubs and the ridiculous shit that's happened in those circumstances. Sorry to swear.
Ridiculous shit. The summary of the book, really. I think several things from what you just said, like society still thinks that disability is bad. It's not. Actually, all the best thing that ever happened to me because I'm disabled. All of them. All of them. Um, ableism is bad. And accessibility is bad. Exclusion is bad. Discrimination is bad. Disability is great. And it's so important to make that distinction. And then the other thing about what you said about the stories in the book, a lot of them are bad things that happen, right? And the mental toll of that is much higher than any mental toll not being able to stand up.
Mm.
And it's constant. And it is a done need to have. I think one of my roles in my writing is to show non-disabled people how constant it is. Because I think people think that ableism is not getting a job, not being able to get an accessible house, not being able to get on a plane. And it is all of those things, but it's also, being taught to like your child in a shop. It's also being told that no one will date you. It's also, you know, being spoken over and ignored and bullied at school. It's all these sort of little instances that you go, each one's not that bad, but together they're really bad.
Mm.
I think it's the sort of, I call it a bit of a war of attrition that I'm fighting with the well. I'm really fighting with the well. I don't know that non-disabled people understand that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So then when you go, if you're talking about leadership, if a disabled person in your organization comes to you and says, I've experienced discrimination that's really bad, they're only telling you about the worst thing. They're not telling you about all of it because that would be a full-time job. They're telling you about the worst 5% of it. And they're carrying with them the other 95. And I think being aware of that as a leader is quite important.
Yeah. Yeah, like the energy and the heaviness and the exhaustion and the incredibleness of that human being only sharing that 5% and carrying the rest of it because of the way the world isn't designed for that space to release and explore and make sure that you don't, to mention all of those things, which really ideally, that's what I'm kind of reflecting on, and I'm interested in I'm like hopeful that these conversations can become so widely shared everywhere, and your wisdom, so that everybody's thinking about this, so that people would meet you and go, Lucy's like doing this activism and traveling across London and doing the added exhaustion of like planning the travel and the multiple levels of that. And then, like you said, the sort of war of attrition, small moments of, and somebody, so then they're meeting you with such kind of deep respect and curiosity about, so how do I make that easier? How can I facilitate that so it's fluid, so that you can thrive and everybody else can thrive, but everybody's coming from a bigger shared understanding of what it is to live in an ableist world. And then hopefully the world becomes less ableist.
Yeah. We can do
Yeah, I know, I know. And I guess the thing so just going back to kind of the things that you've kind of had to take control of, and also that are completely brilliant. So I'm curious about how you're just connecting to the earlier point about how you talk about being disabled not bad, it's all the other things about being disabled. You feel really joyful in many ways, and I'm thinking about something joyful about the queer prom that you recently hosted, and I'm curious about how that went, what's important to you about that, anything you want to share about that.
Yeah. What does that? The, I think it surprises people that because disabled people in general are seen as sort of asexual, aromantic, uh, and that is linked to infantilization. Um, if you're seen as a child, you can't be seen as sexual or having sexuality, right? Um, and that's true for all disabled people. And then you sort of factor in having sexuality that is not quote unquote the norm. And everyone's very confused. But actually, huge overlap between disabled people and LGBTQ people. Um, and that's just not represented anywhere. Um, which may or may not be one of the reasons I didn't know I was gay until I'm 28, because I never saw it. I never saw um, a disabled person like me talk about being queer. Um, so I came out, and then in Catholic Lucy fashion, I identified a problem decided to fix it. So, a lot of, especially a lot of private events were not accessible. So I put on demand for disabled queer people. So we did one last year. It was more of a panel and a hangout, and it was great. And then we did some more small ones, and then we wanted to do something big for Pride this year. And there's a traditional queer prom where adults who didn't get to be themselves maybe at school have prom. And we all know that for disabled people that was even more true at school because of inaccessibility, access and things. Um, so I thought, why not? Why not do it for disabled queer people? Um, so that's what we did, and it was wonderful. Um, and I think disabled people in general don't get to be relaxed in spaces. Um, Either because you're worrying about how you're going to get to the loo, or you're worrying about someone saying something bizarre. Um, so creating spaces where they know that that's not going to happen is so important and so rare. And you really see people sort of have a realization they can just chill out and have fun. And it makes me weak. But it's such a, because of my job, I actually find myself in disability spaces. Not often, but regularly, you know. But so many people don't get that. They don't get to be in spaces where they are the majority, and seeing people experience that for the first time is such a privilege, and I love it. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I was reading about it this morning, and it was fully accessible. Like that's what you do, about the toilets, the quiet space, everything. It's just
And we do it with no money. So, so I don't know why everyone else didn't do it.
yeah,
If
yeah.
we can do it, and the two of us, and we have a budget of about £no, and we cobble it together on favors and, you know, fundraising, then organizations should be able to do it.
Great. It's such a lovely example, and I'm so glad hearing you say how wonderful it was to see people relax. Like that was another level I'd not even thought of till you just said that about how lovely it is when you're in, and the phrasing, like when you're in the majority, and yeah, human beings need multiple opportunities for that.
I didn't experience that until I was 23, no, over 25, 26.
Right.
I was in a room where more people were disabled than not, and it blew my mind.
Really?
And it's the best, really. It's like drugs. I need drugs. I need to be in rooms of wheelchairs. Like, it's a different way of resisting. And it's only when you feel it that you realize how on edge you are everywhere else. Like, I would have said to you, oh, I'm not bothered about being the only one, because I'm so used to it. But when that feeling goes away, when you haven't got one eye on what someone's about to say to you. It's It's like living in a different world for 3 hours or 4 hours. And I think, I think where there are obviously still issues, the queer community is that there's gay bars and there's queer community centres and whatever. There's no such thing as a disabled person's bar.
Mm.
We don't get that. Um, so I'm trying to make it a little bit every now and again.
Mm. So this is the beginning of you. This is gonna go like you hope for it to go bigger and
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. So we need a break. We need a break. I need a break. Um, but we'll see what happens next.
I hope it does get bigger and bigger. It's great. And so thinking about that experience there, and then also I loved reading about your time at Warwick University. And I'm sort of now curious about, what the way that Warwick University, both the culture and the practical and physical accessibility sort of combined. What do you think about what sort of Warwick University can teach about leadership and about change and the things that can happen?
I think what Warwick showed and what someone needs. They had a very good disability department. Um, and because it's the 1960s, um, but in New Bill, lots of disabled people go there, um, because it's accessible. Um, which is why I always say if you build it, they will come. Like, if you make it accessible, you will get customers. Um, but because of that, they were very open to asking that question, what do you need? And then doing it.
Mm,
But because they've done it before, I remember being sort of, 18 and thinking, oh, what would really make a difference to me would be if I could turn my light off in my room from my bed. Because then my PA can put me to bed, I can sit up reading, chatting to my friends, whatever. Many things different. And
mm,
it probably costs 25 quid. Right?
yeah.
But they were willing to do that. And it wasn't 17 different forms. It was, I will just send a vote for maintenance. Got
Yes.
done, right? I think so often we bog it down in bureaucracy and disabled people didn't give up because who had time to do 17 forms. Well, actually, you 18, you want to be out when you miss.
Yeah.
And they never made me deal with the bureaucracy. So I could just sort of resist. And the fact that I could go out and be on campus and not only get everyone on campus on my own, but also bump into like 7 different disabled people
Yeah.
gave me so much confidence to
Mm.
like be a person um, and try things and do things and enjoy myself. I know it wasn't complicated. It was just saying yes rather than no.
Yeah, like even the pub, you describe how even the pub tables you could fit your wheelchair under. So you
Yeah.
could be in the pub, you know?
It's so equalizing.
Yeah, yeah. So that equalizing and empowering, they're lovely words. So I guess the intention is that that can increase to back again, you know, and that somehow that big city that you love, London, could be more like that.
Love them, hate them.
Oh, right. I wonder how many people say
Yeah.
that.
I've done a lot of work now on the intersection of disability and womanhood and sexism and ableism. Um, I think writing the book and then also doing a lot of reporting about this, like, in so many ways, the issues that disabled women face appear to be the opposite of what non-disabled women face. So if we take body image, right, non-disabled women are supposed to aspire to this ridiculous beauty ideal that is like steeped in misogyny. Um, Most non-disabled women are expected to like hate how we look and never even bother to look nice because what's the point? You're disabled anyway. Okay. So they look at opposite problems, but actually they're both based on this sort of mythical ideal body that doesn't exist. So it's the same inherent issue manifested in sort of opposite ways. But
Mm.
I think that applies to so many issues that non-disabled women and disabled women face that appear very different but actually inherently the same. But because they appear different, feminism, mainstream feminism, has dealt with that by ignoring disabled women, which actually inherently weakens some of them because, like, 1 in 5 people are disabled. They're not talking about them, you pay them. So I think we need to get over this idea that because it looks different on the outside, that means it is different because it's not. It's all sexism. It's all ableism. Actually, non-disabled women experience an incredible amount of ableism.
Yeah,
Look at how everyone who's ever been pregnant is treated. That's ableism.
yeah, yes.
So, we
Wow.
should be on the same side. And for some reason I can't understand, we're not on the same side. Oh, um, so I talk about a lot of my work is about going, look, it's the same problem that's tackled for everyone, not just for one set of women or, you know, one set of disabled people. All of us are being oppressed by the same, like, ableist patriarchy nonsense. And that's essentially what the book's about. And all the ways that ableism, sexism are intention, but also are encouraged. Um, and how that manifests and what we can do about it. That's the central argument of the book. My expertise is in ableism and sexism, but it's also deeply heteronormative. It's deeply racist and it's deeply classist. So it's all the same problem.
Mm.
Uh, if I learned anything from coming out and being queer species, It's how often someone talks about homophobia, and I'm like, oh, sounds exactly like ableism. But
Mm,
it's the same thing. And the thing I'm really passionate about is getting minorities to work together. Because we're having the same fight. Might as well have the fight alongside each other.
yeah. And that's just like what your natural skill, I guess, that I can see in like noticing the opportunity for collaboration continuously in multiple different ways for change. What do you see kind of, is there anything you see, again, just thinking about leadership or organizations or tangible changes that people could make as a result of the awareness and intelligence you're sharing in this subject?
Yeah, yeah, there's so many easy things you can do. Don't make assumptions. Ask. Um, as I say again and again, listen to the answer. Um, and just like educate yourself. I think all minorities are forced to advocate for ourselves, and some of us are quite happy to do that in certain settings. That's my job. But it is exhausting. Very tired people. And the more you can educate yourself by reading and listening to podcasts and, and looking things up and just being engaged with these issues, the less I have to have the same conversation over and over again. And the resources are out there now, frankly. The books is this, the website is this, the Instagram account is this. This information is available to you. You have to seek it out.
Mm,
Um, and then I think just like understanding you don't know that is sort of okay. It's okay to not know what to do about something
mm,
if you then go and find out.
yeah,
But if you just don't know and therefore go, well, it's not my problem, that is not okay.
no, no.
Um, I also at a really fundamental basic level, treat people like people,
Mm,
like which you think we mastered by now, but we have not. And disabled people, especially visibly disabled people and particularly autistic people, are treated like children. So on a very basic level, the first thing you can do to as an adult.
mm,
Yeah, mom was like radical belief that independence is nonsense. Um, no one's independent. Newsflash, no one's independent. You could be the most non-disabled person ever. You're not independent. Unless you are growing your own food, being your own doctor,
yeah,
driving your own train.
yeah,
I don't know, but you are not independent.
yeah.
For that
Your
idea,
own plane.
throw that idea out the window, my friend. It's nonsense. It's capitalist sexist nonsense is what that is.
Mm,
And it's so macho it's so much this idea that you should do everything people do. Where I pick that from? Bring that idea, first of all.
Yeah.
That's how I do it. Bye bye. Secondly, let's bring the idea that dependence is bad. We should belong to each other.
Mm.
Surely that is at the core of the human condition. Like, you need your friends, you need the farmer, you, like in different ways,
Yeah.
but you do. And isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Isn't that lovely that our lives are conditioned on letting other people help us and helping them back?
Mm.
And if we accept that, we can then see that the way that society thinks about care is also nonsense. You know, the thing that people feel most sorry for me for some reason, is the fact that I don't care. Do you know how much fun we have? Like, we're, we're studying and we're enjoying ourselves, and sometimes they take me to the room. Sometimes I give them a hug because they're sad. It's not. How could that be possibly a bad thing? Like, I fundamentally actually understand how you can look at this and be like, oh, but the region can feel sorry for some. I have my own personal little army. And I do, at my core, believe that they could take over the world. And sometimes that scares me a bit, but I'm here for it. Yeah. To be known and loved and cared for by so many brilliant, funny women.
Mm.
How society is labeled that as a bad life, like, it boggles my little brain. Like, there are things about Canada bad, but they're all bad because of the system. They're all bad because Canada's undervalued, so there's not enough people doing it. And therefore, it's hard to find people and all the rest of it. All that is very bad and very stressful and very upsetting. None of that is related to needing care. We all need care. Well, you know, I like to say that you're either going to be disabled or you're going to die young. Those are your options. At some point, if you are lucky enough to live long enough, you will need care.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. You you've won the lottery.
Mm.
You've lived a life long enough that you need some help.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, we think of care as just like terrible thing that happens to you and then hopefully you die. but like,
Yeah.
what? Like, if it wasn't for care, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. That would be bad. But like, we think the option is have care or have no care. But for lots of people, the option is to have care or to have a life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just, I think feminism lost its way somewhat in the early noughties when it was very like, girl boss, you can do everything. You can do everything like a man. don't want to be like a man. I certainly don't want to be like a non-disabled person. But so I think back to like, you know, sort of 70s feminist communes. And obviously I'm not convinced that you could roll out without unfortunately require men. But like that sort of cooperative helping each other.
Mm.
I think when we look at care, like disability care, we think it goes one way. We think that like my peers do everything for me and they get paid for that. But but obviously they should get paid for that. But I also care for them.
Mm.
I also give emotional support. I'm the one who looks at them study when they're here and I'm proofread where essays.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just a thing that's done for me and to me, it's done with each other.
Yeah.
And people really don't understand that, but it's never one way.
And you're exchanging that together and
And I radicalize them.
yes.
I get text messages that say, why have I just shouted mad about that stuff? I
Oh,
took one to a protest the other day and she was shouting more than I was. I was like, yeah, this is correct. This is what I want from those.
yeah, great. This is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever this is, nailed it.
I love that phrase. Nailed it. Yeah. Okay, so the last question was about representation. So
Yeah.
obviously in your book you give the example of how like catalytic, like how transformative it would be if in films, that children are exposed to from the beginning. In films, there's people with disabilities, there's people like having romance, there's people having multiple different experiences. So you talk about, in films and that children are experiencing when they're young and then all the way through. And I've been thinking about something, and it was one last question about your opinion, really. But, representation so important, and in TV, in media, in films. And then, of course, the kind of fervent beast that is social media. And I'm wondering, as like allies, how we can use social media to be useful in all that you share, and also anything that you want to just say about representation in the media. Because again, I think, this kind of interview or this conversation we're having is kind of hooked on leadership inspiration, but I think it's applicable on every level about representation.
Yeah, I think, going back to that feminist underpinning, like one of the core sort of messages of feminism is you can't be what you can't see. And disabled people, especially my generation and older, couldn't see disabled people doing things. We weren't in the media, we weren't on TV, we weren't anywhere apart from, every 4 years you got the Paralympics. I was not a very sporty kid, and I used to think about I don't want to be a Paralympian. That was awful. Would I have to get up at 4 a.m. and train? No, I don't want to. But that was the only visibility of disabled people ever. And changing. But I have a problem now, I think, where there is representation, but it's bad. And it's not authentic, and we see the same tropes over and over and over again. So whether that's progress or not necessarily sure. But I think, in leadership, and we're very good now. Well, no, I take that back. We're better now at hiring disabled people at lower levels, especially in big organizations. There be a sort of disability scheme where they'll hire some very junior disabled people, which is great. Because why do none of them ever get promoted?
Mm.
Because I bet you they get head up. Because they managed to get in the door, and you know mean for. So I'd say they're both good at their jobs. And yet, they don't get promoted. I've never met a disabled senior manager. If I've never met one, how is it to imagine being one?
Mm.
And I'm certainly never seen one on TV or being interviewed on a news show about anything with disability or whatever. There's never been a rom-com about a disabled person, but a disabled person didn't die in the end. And if it's not anywhere in the culture, not only is it hard for you to imagine doing it yourself, but no one expects you to do it.
Mm.
It creates some problems. So, as a writer, as a journalist, and someone who works in the creative industry, I see every day how powerful representation is, but also how damaging bad representation is. I sort of spend my life emailing people going, can you not say that? And can you not pit disability benefits against the two-child welfare cap? Because now you've made disabled people the bad guy. Um, wow. Or can you not describe this 14-year-old kid who's having quite a lot of fun as wheelchair bound is because it's not 1952. I have the conversations every day. I'm very bored. I'm very bored with it. Also, it hires some disabled people to tell you not to do. If there were disabled people making decisions about what went on TV, you would prevent yourself from having problems with the obvious maybe give them some power. Just a thought. Maybe Commissioner Erica. Um, it's very basic stuff. I was like, maybe read about disability before you write a book about it, or
Mm.
before you commission a program,
Mm.
that sort of thing. Um, so I'm basically constantly furious, but it is changing,
Yeah.
like at a snail's pace. But it used to be so hard for me to get commissions about disability, and now editors actually come important to me.
As it
And
should.
part of that is that I'm more well known now. But it's also a recognition that one in five people are disabled, so maybe they should be covering this. Oh, fair enough. It's gonna be a long time before it's enough, but we are there's progress ish.
A gently hopeful note, I guess, I'm aware, like, for an overtime, thank you. Oh, Lucy, it's just you just, yeah, you are so thoughtful and skilled and bright and intelligent and mapping it and yet sharing it in a way that's like so
Well,
easy.
I have been thinking about it for 30 years.
Well, it shows. Yeah. Thank you for those 30 years.
No new problem.
No, sadly, not a new problem. Yeah, well, your freshness, even after 30 years of having to think about it, is a total delight and a privilege. And thank you so much for the interview. And
Well,
yeah, anything else you want to say?
that's useful.
It was, oh my goodness, it was so useful. Yeah, do you want me to answer this? Well, yes, while recording, I think it'd be cool. Yeah, it was so useful. So it's like you've given so many concrete examples of what could be done differently and what's wrong. And you have this incredible equilibrium between like hopeful change, examples of change, and why it needs to happen because of the problem. For example, what you shared then about, I've thought just about representation. I hadn't thought about how quickly and easily it could happen if representation was led by people in those positions, in those management positions, so you don't have to have the conversation. I hadn't thought about the idea of feminism and connecting it back to, I knew about your ideas about collaboration and the synergy with PAs, but I'd never thought about it in relation to kind of like that 70s feminist idea of being together, learning, sharing, exchanging, which is kind of a model for all of society, not just women. So you've literally brought to life even more the ideas in your book, and also the change that I'm hoping to kind of be a tiny part in inviting people to think about.